Chris, what is our third main topic today?
This comes from Morris Griff. Hi, John. Longtime fan since the For Your Consideration days.
Oh, thank you.
I've personally liked most stuff in Phase 4 so far, with the exception of Eternals and Hawkeye. But even though I've liked most of it, I can really feel the absence of Captain America and Iron Man. Like, a lot. Without them, it just doesn't feel like home anymore, if that makes any sense. I know you've said these characters are very important to the MCU, so I just wanted to ask, how much do you think the MCU is missing them right now? Thanks.
All right, thanks a lot for saying that in, Morris. And yeah, this is a topic that comes up once in a while. Actually, a few weeks ago, we did a topic on the five main struggles the MCU is having with Phase 4, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I did bring up was basically the absence of Captain America and Iron Man. When you ask how much do I think the MCU is missing them right now, the answer in scientific terms is a shitload, a hell of a lot. I think
is that measurably in scientific
yes, that's
terms?
an objective measurement. Einstein actually first came up with the equation for
Got it.
For there's micro, nano, and then there's shitload. I think that's the actual scientific thing for it. So I personally think they miss them a lot. And here's basically why to me. And it highlights to me what I think is the one and only calculation strategic error that Kevin Feige has made with the MCU. Like, not everything in the MCU has been great, but when the MCU hasn't been great, that's an issue of execution and whatever. But as far as strategy goes, I mean, Kevin Feige's strategy for the MCU has been impeccable, I think, save for one thing. And here's what that one thing is. From Iron Man 1, I mean, you could just say something else, but from Iron Man 1 on, Tony and then Captain America, the first Avenger, they became the anchor stones of the MCU. That even when you were doing movies that were not Iron Man or Captain America movies and didn't even have them in it, like even like the first Ant-Man, you could feel Iron Man and Captain America's anchoring of that world, right? Everything kind of revolved around Tony and Steve. They became your anchor stones. They became your pivot points. They were your captains, right? And so when you would think of the MCU, for the most part, a lot of people think about these two guys on screen. Like, that's kind of what you think about when you think about the MCU. It's Cap and Iron Man. And that's why, like, when it came down to Civil War, like, probably the most iconic shot visually of the MCU through the first four phases has been that recreation of the Civil War with Iron Man doing the blast and Cap with the shield, because that's it. That's the heart of the MCU. With them gone, and no matter, well, there's that image right there. So no matter what they would do in the first three phases of the MCU, that anchor was always there, right? That was always kind of centering it and kind of being the identity of the MCU in a lot of ways. With Cap and Iron Man being gone at the same time, I feel like it's not just, you hear a lot of people complain about, I don't see the overall storyline of Phase 4. That's never bothered me. But what I think a part of that is that those anchoring factors aren't there anymore. The identity of the MCU isn't there anymore. And so not so much we don't have our next Thanos, but I think the absence of those cornerstones is kind of making the MCU, and there's a lot in Phase 4 I've liked very much. Don't get me wrong. I'm not sitting here to crap on Phase 4. I'm just saying with their absence, it feels like it's drifting a bit. Like there's no central character there to kind of anchor it all. And I would say, going back to what I was saying earlier, that the one strategy mistake that Kevin Feige has made was Kevin Feige did not adequately plan and prepare for what the next anchor was going to be once Cap and Iron Man were gone. There was, like, a lot of people would speculate after Endgame, who's going to be the new leaders of the Avengers? Who's going to be that? What we were really asking was, subconsciously we knew we were asking, what's going to be the anchor of the MCU now? Because Tony and Cap are gone at the same time. God bless that Thor is still there. That at least still makes it feel a little bit like home, seeing Thor, because he's OG with this cinematic universe. But I believe the one strategic mistake Kevin made was that leading into Phase 3, he didn't start to think about we have to have who the baton is being passed to set and ready to go. There was some speculation in the earlier years before Captain Marvel came out that it was going to be Captain Marvel, because Kevin Feige would talk a lot about this is the most powerful Avenger and blah, 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 blah. Some people thought maybe it was going to be Spider-Man, which never made any sense. Why would they follow a teenager in high school? Still, some people thought maybe it'll be Doctor Strange, but they say he's not even an Avenger. But he never thought about and charted out and built up early in the years before Endgame that, okay, once Tony and Cap are gone, we need to have the next people ready to step up and be those new figureheads, the faces of the MCU, the anchors for the MCU, and kind of how our identity is built. And because he didn't do that, we've kind of floated from, hey, here's our Ms. Marvel, and here's Shang-Chi, and here's Moon Knight, and and it's just kind of, it almost has a sense of randomness to it. Whereas in the first three phases, even when they brought in new characters, it never felt random. You know what I mean? So when you ask the question to me, how much do they miss them right now? I think it's a hell of a lot. So anyway, that's my thought, Ray.
I think with the first phase, they gave us, and we knew we were going to Endgame, right?
We knew we were going to Avengers.
We saw the destination, and they were giving us the road bit by bit, but we always saw where we were going. Right now, it feels like they're throwing down pieces to a puzzle, but we have no clue where it's going. And I think a lot of people are getting frustrated at it because it's like, what if it doesn't end up being good? They wasted all their time watching all these things just to get something. You know what I mean? People are getting really scared about what we're being led into, and that's why I don't know. I just think it was a lot easier with the initial phases than it is right now.
Rob, you once said that, like, right now, and I agree with you, by the way, you once said that right now what they're doing is laying out the pieces, right? But when you go back to phase one with Iron Man, they were setting out the pieces, but also anchoring it right away. Said, this is the identity of the MCU right away as they were laying out the pieces. And I feel like they haven't been able to do that yet. So again, you know, it's not even not so much that they miss Cap and Iron Man that much. They miss somebody being in their shoes. That's that kind of. We want to take a moment and thank the sponsor of today's video, Storyblocks. Guys, I have been an enthusiastic fan and user of Storyblocks for years. I go to them whenever I'm in need of content creation assets like royalty-free music, video clips, or templates for my creative projects, ranging anywhere from little editorial videos to my very own full-feature documentary. Storyblocks helps you bring your stories, videos, and projects to life without sacrifices due to time, budget, or access to resources. They have over 1 million different story assets ranging from stock videos, audio and music, an in-browser video editor, and they feature pre-designed templates, animations, and outros. Storyblocks uses an affordable subscription model, and their unlimited access plans offers, well, unlimited video and audio downloads rather than a costly pay-per-clip model. With Storyblocks, you'll be able to create more content and, more importantly, better content, all while using a subscription plan that fits your budget, utilizing unlimited downloads of demand-driven and diverse content. So if you're interested in upping your content creation game, head over to www.storyblocks.com/Campea and get started today. That's www.storyblocks.com/Campea. So I don't know, you look at it right now, and if the question is basically asked you, how much is the MCU missing Iron Man and Captain America right now, how would you address it?
Well, I think, first of all, they are missing them. And because even when you saw the first Iron Man as a film worked incredibly well. If that was the only Marvel movie they ever made, that Kevin Feige's regime, people would have gone away and said, that's an outstanding superhero movie. That's also an outstanding movie about a man on a voyage of self-discovery. It worked on many different levels. It didn't have some apocalyptic world-ending thing. It was two guys basically hitting each other over
fighting for the soul of a company.
The company, and fighting for the soul of one another. And Tony Stark was fighting for redemption because he was a playboy dick that didn't realize what his work was doing to the world. So it's a really solid film. That said, then they set up the fact there's an Avengers initiative. So immediately at the end of Iron Man 1, in that post-credit scene, we're now building to the Avengers, which is what we all wait for. Then we have to get Cap, we have to get Thor, Black Widow, Hulk, all these characters. So we knew there was a road. They already set up a roadmap to get to the Avengers. That took 4 years until we got the Avengers in 2012. That's a long time, and then once we had the Avengers, it's okay, now we have the team. Well, now that we have the team together, what's next? Then you've got these characters, the threats are going to get bigger. You've got Loki and the Chitauri, but that was just, we knew the opening salvo of Thanos' attacking Earth. And then we had other threats, Ultron and Tony Stark going, well, after the Chitauri invasion, we have to build a suit of armor around the world. So all these people, all these characters have things that they're doing. There's directions, multiple prongs of places to go. And there's this threat out there. So there was all of this building. There's stuff happening. Now, like you said, there's all these disparate elements that there's no forward momentum. Like they keep setting up things like in Shang-Chi, who's behind the wall, who's behind those doors. Moon Knight, what are these Egyptian gods going to do? The Celestials, we're going to come back and judge the earth. Maybe. We've taken half the Eternals. I mean, there's all this stuff happening that could go in a million different directions, but we have no idea. I was hoping in Thor, Love and Thunder.
And also no central figure to even anchor where it could be going.
No, and the thing is, with phase 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, and 3, Tony Stark was really the through line. Because ultimately, we saw his rebirth in Iron Man 1, and then we saw his death in Endgame. So really, there was an ongoing, and how he would show up in Spider-Man and offer sage-like pearls of wisdom to help Tom Holland Spider-Man come along. So you did have that, or you had Captain America as well, but not as Tony Stark was the engine of the MCU. We not only do we not have that, we don't even have anybody that it might be. I thought Love and Thunder was going to solidify. Love and Thunder was, like Chris Gore said, an episode of a TV show. It was an episode. It didn't give us, it should have, but it had more questions. It added more gods, and it added more stuff, and it added eternity and, Valhalla and all this stuff. But where's the driving engine? That's what we're missing. And Captain America, Tony Stark was the driving engine. He was the heart. He was the pumping heart. Captain America was the soul. And Thor was call him what you want, action.
The meaty hammer.
Yeah, the hammer. Whatever.
Wait a minute, I take that back. That didn't sound right at all.
But now.
Sorry, I regretted that immediately.
But we were missing a heart. We were missing a soul, and Thor was maybe the action. So you have the heart, the soul, and Thor's the action. We don't have any of that.
Not yet.
And not yet. And now they're lining all this stuff up. But the problem is, I think we've never had an MCU. The MCU always had a direction. Now it has none. And it had a direction for 23 movies. Well, 22 plus Spider-Man.
See, here's what I would say, too, is that even if in WandaVision, which kind of kicked off phase 4 in many ways, even if in WandaVision, Kang came in and said, I am the ultimate bad guy, and we all knew that it was all leading towards Kang, which it may or may not be, without that heart, without that soul, because you're right. I love the way you put that. Not only have they not given us a new heart and soul to kind of be the centerpiece driving this whole thing, we don't even know who it could be.
Right.
At this point. I think that's a great way to put it. Anyway, Chris, what do you make of this whole thing?
I mean, Rob said it really, really well, and there's not much to expand upon here. The biggest things for me are that all of these phase 4 items have really felt like islands. Right?
Yeah.
They've all just been kind of contained unto themselves. And we keep hearing about how all these puzzle pieces are going to fit together better soon. But we haven't seen the greater picture like you guys were saying. So that's an issue, first of all. We also then have the issue of leadership, right? One, we don't have that dynamic because everyone's been isolated. We don't have the chemistry that Tony and Cap had. Because even when they were fighting each other or when they were best friends, they were never really best friends. That's a little stretch, Chris. They still had this great dynamic with one another. They challenged each other, right? We need to have everyone come together so we see some of that. CBR actually put out a really great article about this last month about how the Captain America decision, too, has felt so watered down because no one else has weighed in on Sam. No one else who matters has weighed in on Sam. And we also introduced, in a way, another Captain America. We introduced Captain Carter, which further dilutes who wields the shield then. So we already have this kind of narrative issue with leadership, as well as actually seeing, hey, no one is talking to each other. So how do you assemble a team when no one's calling out Avengers Assemble?
Yeah, and you know what? we don't even know if there's an Avengers team.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like Doctor Strange, it was the only time I think in the whole thing they've talked about Avengers. Like in Eternals, they mention Avengers. Doctor Strange comes out and says, we can get you back on the lunchbox. Well,
Yeah.
who's on the lunchbox?
Yeah, who else is on the lunchbox
Where
right
are they
now?
selling it? At some
What-
gift shop?
At Avengers Con.
Avenger
Rob.
Con.
Yeah,
at Avengers Con.
But even that, is somebody putting that on, or is that hope? I mean, Avengers headquarters was destroyed at the end of Endgame.
Yeah, it's always destroyed.
But we don't know anything about anything. Like there's no.
I think the introduction of these new characters is gonna pay off. It's just gonna take time.
But here's
Like,
the thing: in Phase 1, it didn't take time. In Phase 1, they're like, here's a new character, and here's pieces of the puzzle. Now here's another new character. In Phase 4, how many properties we've had in Phase 4 so far? WandaVision, Loki, Falcon Winter Soldier,
Shang-Chi, Eternals.
Eternals,
Hawkeye.
Black Widow. What's that one?
Hawkeye.
Hawkeye, Thor, Love and Thunder. There's 8.
Ms. Marvel.
Moon Knight.
Moon Knight, there's 9. What if I wish
Miss
we would
Marvel.
cover
Miss Marvel.
Miss Marvel. Okay, so 10. We've had 10. How when we say eventually, how long we've literally had more we've already had more properties come out in Phase 4 than all of
All of it.
Phase 1 had altogether combined.
But I do want to bring it down like to let's say talk about wrestling in the past. Remember WWF and WCW?
Yeah.
And how WCW kept bought all the older top guys.
Yeah,
whatever.
brought in all- yeah.
And then the whole time WWF was getting their ass kicked, right? But they were building
Monday Night
these
Wars,
smaller gimmicks no one knew about. And they started winning because they were hanging on to this old thing. And like these new gimmicks that they were coming up with started getting really popular, but it took time. I just think it takes time for us to attach. And plus, we're going deeper into the Marvel comics. I knew who Captain America was and Iron Man was before even Phase 1. So we had that advantage of at least being familiar with. Now we're getting into sort of like the back pages that I don't even know about Moon Knight.
Yeah, but see,
I don't know about Miss Marvel.
There's
I
a
don't know-
problem right there, right? Instead of introducing a new character and then having that character reappear, something else, they just throw 18 more new characters at us without pacing it out. So we're not even getting to really know these characters. Anyway, we can go on from this.
I mean,
topic.
also-
We need to move on. We have to move on. But what's your last thought? Because we got to keep going.
In addition to that, they've added the same amount of what could potentially be villains. We don't
Yes,
even
yeah.
have a threat like these threats. Everyone has a new threat that just, and I'm like, who are we? And then they disappear.
Yeah, is the clandestines universe going to wipe out our world? Are the Celestials going to come and wipe out our world?
It's like high school cliques. Who's the meanest bully?
Yes. Is Zeus and his son Hercules now going to become the biggest threat? Is Kang going to be the
It's gonna
biggest
come
threat?
from
Is
within.
Galactus going to show? I mean, anyway, we can go on this in a long time. Anyway, guys, again, not just they haven't done some great stuff in Phase 4. They absolutely have. It's just that's the one strategic mistake I think Feige has made. And that's why I think they miss Iron Man and Captain America very much. Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think of all that? Whatever your thoughts are, jump down to the comment section below and leave those thoughts there.